Hi, everyone. My name is Jeanine Buzali. I'm one of the leaders of Ashoka's Changemaker Companies team, which is our corporate advisory team. I'm based in DC and a little jet lag, but I think this is energizing in like the right way. Good mix of, all the hormones in my body, with the adrenaline, etc. Hi, welcome. Come on in. So yesterday, at the sessions that I was at yesterday, this question of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a tool or a method to unleash true participation came up already in the conversations that I was at. And I was reflecting on today and how this is super exciting that we get this opportunity to talk about DEI and true participation in this context of the role that organizations and specifically companies can play in society, right? So we have these different dimensions of inclusion, role of companies kind of inside their own culture and externally in their ecosystem, and this idea of true participation and how we actually do that, right? So today we have this great panel of professionals who are working on this challenge from these different perspectives. We're gonna do some questions, so kind of classic panel questions, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. It's a small room. Hi to everyone on the live stream also, but hopefully we can have an intimate conversation here. So a little bit of context for what we're doing today, why we wanted to have this conversation. So Ashoka's driving the Everyone a Changemaker movement. I hope everyone knows that by now. Hopefully it's come across in the session. And so with Changemaker Companies, which like I said is the work we do with corporations, we combine this vision of Everyone a Changemaker with change management, right? So how do you create this internal culture of change making that enables and empowers people to drive change inside their organizations through their work? And so the kind of connection with DEI is that we need inclusive environments to unleash a better role for companies in society in which every employee is participating, right? And there's this idea that there's like a role and a responsibility that every person can have. And to me, because this is what I do, I'm very passionate about this work, that feels especially true in corporations, right? This role and responsibility of leaders in companies who manage a lot of assets and have a lot of talent at their disposal. So today we're gonna understand how to build these inclusive environments, or inclusive cultures, inclusive practices. I'm gonna say the word inclusive a lot. We're gonna start by defining it just now. And what is that journey? What does that look like? And also, what are the challenges, right? That's why we like this intimate space, because we're gonna talk about how this is also very difficult and how, spoiler of the conclusion, trying, even if you don't succeed exactly how you want it, is already success, right? That's kind of true about systems change in general, I think. So I'm gonna ask our speakers to introduce themselves, and then we're gonna jump into some definitions and then some stories of what these amazing people have tried to do inside their organizations. Misel, let's start with you. Welcome to our panel.
Thank you.
Yes. So let's do, what did we say? I have it written down. So name, organization, role, and why DEI matters to you personally.
Thank you so much. I don't think I can do it any better than you just did in the opening, quite frankly, but I'll give it a try. Hi, everyone. I'm Misel. I work for Beiersdorf. So we are a big skincare company. Hopefully, most of you have used at some point in your lives one of our products. And I am responsible for DE&I, talent acquisition, and employer branding in the organization. And the reason why I am really passionate about DE&I is because I really believe that talent is distributed equally, but opportunity and barriers are not. And DE&I is really helping to create a much more equitable world where everyone can maximize their participation. I think this is incredibly important, both on a personal, professional, and also societal level.
Thank you. Very well said. Agreed. Yes. Christiane?
Yeah. Very well said. So it will be difficult for Michael. So my name is Christiane. I'm head of social impact strategy and partnerships at Beiersdorf. I'm with Beiersdorf for 16 years now. And I'd like to say what inclusion means to me. So for me, inclusion is it's a fundamental necessity. So without inclusion, from my perspective, we perpetuate inequality. We won't have any innovation, and we will actually endanger our collective future. That's how I feel about inclusion.
Thank you, Christiane. Yeah.
So I'm Lorena Garcia Duran. I have the responsibility to lead Ashoka's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. I've been with Ashoka for 16 years, a lot of white hair. And for me, I truly believe in a better world for everyone. And I don't think that that is possible without a very strong commitment to diversity and what diversity actually means, and equity, and of course, inclusion.
Thank you, Lorena. Michael?
Yeah, Michael, I'm one of the managing directors of Wider Sense. We're a social impact consultancy, and we work with corporates. One of our clients is also Bayersdorf, and we work with them on their social impact strategies. So their community engagement, but also more and more beyond the traditional, what was called corporate citizenship. We also look at brand engagements and so a variety of these issues. And I'm pretty sure we'll come to that in a second, one more time or later. For myself, I'm going to take it from a personal stand. Inclusion UI is really important because I have a son who has a visual impairment, and I have experienced what it means to get somebody with a visual impairment through the traditional school system in Germany. And it is quite a challenge because you have to make people aware, again and again aware about the challenges and how can you create equal opportunities for somebody with a challenge. So that's the one thing. And the other thing, as the leader of an organization or a company, for sure, it's an ongoing struggle. How do you create diversity in an organization? And that comes from all layers of diversity. How do you create that? And there, I'm learning every day, especially from the young employees in our team who actually have grown up with, sometimes for them, most of these things come a lot more natural than they may come for myself, for instance. And that's something that I also find really important, and I also find important in this discussion.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. So let's start with this definition of inclusion and how it links to diversity, equity, and inclusion more broadly. Lorena, let's start with you. So can you help us understand what it means and how might it relate to everyone's everyday work?
I mean, I'll try. I think inclusion is about building a culture of belonging and building the structures and the processes to ensure that every person, every individual can bring their full self in participation, whatever that space might look like. And I think it's very important for us to think about the practices and the structures that we need to put in place so that every individual does feel the opportunity that they can bring their full selves, their complexity as individuals into whatever the space that is. To me, that's inclusion. And I think that many times when we hear the word inclusion, like, can you bring it down to earth? I think inclusion looks like in a corporation, in an organization, in a space, it looks like what are the policies? What are the structures? What are the practices that ensure that everybody feels? It's not just a personal relation, like, do you feel that you, by another person, do you feel that you are seen? Do you feel that that's one thing. But if we don't have the processes, the procedures, the structures that secure that culture, then inclusion might mean a lot of things to many different people.
Thank
Is that
you.
helpful?
Yeah, we're gonna dive into practices and examples in a second, but I want to stay for a second with the imperative, right? So why is this important right now? And Michael, I'm gonna send this to you. So why is it important now more than ever? Yeah, let's start with that. Yeah.
I think it is. So you gave a good definition, and I think the key thing around your definition is this is about policies, and it's to a certain extent about rules. The essential thing, And that is, I think, in this room, I think we will hardly discuss that we think this is the right thing and inclusion is the right thing to do. But nevertheless, it is a contested area. And actually right now, it is again a lot more contested than ever before. So if you, and now I take the corporate space, and if you look at what's going on, especially in the United States right now, then you have to ask yourself, what is happening in this DEY space? So why did a company like John Deere, Harley Davidson, Tractor Supplies, even Lowe's and retailer, why are they pulling out of DEY policies up to the fact that they have dissolved their DEY departments? And that is because there's conservative pressure on that side. And if you want to look it up on Twitter, you can look for a guy called Starbuck, who is also a candidate for the United States Congress, who has really pressured corporates in the United States on this. The other one, and then I will switch to the more positive things. The other thing to look at is, if you ever get a chance, look at the book Woke Capitalism by Carl Rhodes. He's an Australian political scientist, and he has written the playbook for the conservative side on this. Because that playbook very clearly says companies should not get involved in issues that have anything to do with democracy, and they should not get involved in issues like DEY, because these are societal issues and they need to be discussed on the societal space. I think we all understand how do you differentiate that, because in the end, also a company is a citizen and they are a player, and they're actually a very powerful player of change. But nevertheless, Mr. Dos Santos in Florida took this as a tool to say, Disney, if you as a company still do DEY trainings, you're not going to get any contracts from us anymore. And that's a very contested area right now, up to the fact that there are several running law cases where people are also contesting this. But keep that in mind. And here in Europe right now, we're in a very fortunate situation, because CSRD, so the regulation on sustainability, also covers DEY as a critical reporting scheme. So there are 18 indicators for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the CSRD rules. And if you ever want to take the time to read the 274 pages of this regulation, then feel free to do so. But there is a special section that only covers this issue. So there is an agreement in Europe right now that, and we also know that there are European countries where even that is contested. But nevertheless, there's an agreement. If you want to be certified in regards to sustainability, you also have to do your homeworks on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So let's take it.
Yeah.
Let's have it there.
Yeah. So I want to focus on kind of the more positive side.
Sure,
You
we
said,
should.
how is this actually happening, right? Because it is. So what are you seeing in companies, right? So how are companies making this internal change that DEI has to permeate the entire value chain, right? Beyond HR practices.
And I think, so, and this is where, because it's also the question of where does this happen beyond the value chain? And also, where do companies take practices of inclusion, where can they learn, or where can they also be challenged for themselves? So take an example from Bayersdorf. So Eucerin, which is their more medical-oriented skin care product. The brand purpose is around skin diseases and skin irritations that create discrimination. And so the company has gone out with that cause, has actually brought in external experts, and has started to learn around how exclusion, because of these skin diseases happens and what can be done towards it. So that is something that they also took with themselves into the company. What does that mean for us as a team? What do we learn out of this? And it is these interactions between, and in that case, they work a lot with, for sure, medical organizations, civil society organizations all around the world. These learnings that play a really important role. And in addition, what we see right now, what I find very interesting is that suddenly even corporates collaborate on these issues. So if you look at Nike's and Lego's new initiative on play and how children don't get enough chances, especially children which face discrimination because of ethical, religious backgrounds, how they now together want to create a space where there is more opportunity for them to play, then that is very interesting. And Nike has done something similar on growth empowerment with Unilever. So there is.
It's good business.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's good business, but it also has something to do with it is good for the culture. And I'm pretty sure that there we will hear a lot more also from the colleagues. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great segue to what's happening at Beiersdorf. So Misel, over to you. Why does inclusion matter for Beiersdorf and what are you guys doing towards it?
Pressure is on now.
Yeah.
To build. Yeah. Go.
You do really well, yes.
No, I mean, first of all, inclusion matters because for Beiersdorf, because it is the only way in which we can unleash true participation that we get via diversity, right? So, and for us, ultimately as an organization, I mean, on the one hand, I mean, there is also really, of course, a business purpose, you know. I mean, we are a huge organization. We've got a big ambition. We want to be the best skincare company in the world. And that really means that we need to ensure that we draw a talent pool from the diversity of our global community in order to deliver against the needs of our diverse consumers in the best way. And so as we are doing that, we need to, of course, make sure that we really build an environment that is inclusive, where people can really unleash their full potential, where they can bring their authentic selves, where the barriers are eliminated that unfortunately are still in place in several parts of the organization, so that ultimately they can help us become what we are sort of aspire to be. So this is, of course, super important. What's also super important for us around inclusion is, you know, and it goes a bit back to what you were saying. I mean, ultimately, you know, people trust organizations more than they trust, you know, like the politics, the government, you know, the people around.
Yeah.
I mean, and so if that is the case, then as an organization with a huge footprint, we have a duty to really define what an inclusive, representative society looks like. You know, we have, I mean, if we take our biggest brand, Nivea, which I hope all of you know, and use. But Nivea is in 1.2 billion households globally, right? All over the world. I mean, we have such a big, huge platform. And then when you have that platform, you have a duty to use your voice responsibly. And I am happy to say, I'm proud to say that that Beiersdorf is a company that uses their voice in order to really strongly outline what does an inclusive, representative society look like and what is our role. And, you know, we're not there yet, but how do we define our role also, not just internally, but also externally in terms of making a really constructive impact on society as a whole, to unleash that participation across the full value chain.
Yeah.
So I would say those are the two main reasons why inclusion is so critical for us as an organization.
I love that. Let's talk about care beyond the skin. Christiane, can you tell us about that and how, so what is the commitment, right, that you guys have made beyond core business and through your entire value chain?
So Beiersdorf traditionally has been active in the space of social commitments beyond value chain. So it has a long, long tradition in, let's say, doing good. And this tradition goes back more than 100 years. So especially our brand Nivea cooperated with local NGOs for up to 50 to 60 years. So that is already a commitment because it is voluntary. So we do not have to do it. We want to do it because we want to be close to the communities in which we are cooperating and working. So that's what we've done for quite some time. And then with the Beyond Skin purpose, with the company's purpose, there was a kind of paradigm shift. We knew doing good, being socially active in a relevant way is part of our DNA, but we wanted to focus to do it more strategically, in a more consolidated and a more consistent way. Why? We wanted to create impact on an inclusive society. That was our ultimate goal. We wanted to support inclusive communities. And we thought we need, on the one hand, we want to increase, yes, our business impact. We want to do good for our business, but also ultimately for society, because we feel that only good business is done in healthy communities. So there is a link. There's a natural link. So we supported this inclusive society projects. And I just want to give you one example we are especially proud of. This is in 2020 with the purpose, with the kickoff of our company purpose, we started 2 global Beyond Value Chain projects, our Girls Empowerment Project and our Women in Circularity project that is more geared towards environmental topics. And we cooperated with 3 big global players, NGOs players, Plan, Ashoka, and CARE. And since today, we set up 16 projects, long-term projects. And we knew these are very solid projects, solid in terms of impact. But then we asked ourselves, yeah, what is the impact about? We wanted to know more. We wanted to be more credible and more sure. So we asked an external partner to carry out a summative evaluation on the projects, really asking from an external perspective, an independent perspective, are we really doing good? And the feedback was really quite positive. So there was a tangible impact on the communities in the area, in the project areas. And what the evaluation also pointed out is how relevant cooperations are to achieve this. Because very clearly, we can't do this alone. We need external experts, we need to bring them in, and we need local knowledge. So we do not know better, we need the local knowledge. So we did this, and then we thought, okay, that's promising, and I'll come to an end in a second. And then I love it. I love to talk about successes. I will also talk about challenges, so be sure. But then we got quite a positive feedback from UN Global Compact Germany, because they picked up on this summative evaluation and said, okay, we know this from the environmental sphere, but we would like to cover you and to showcase your external evaluation also on our platform. And this is huge. This is something that has been done in the environmental area, but not in the social. And so now they are again highlighting the impact, but also the relevance of cooperations. And now, to my surprise, I learned that more and more networks in the sustainability area are picking up on this on our joint try to create a higher impact. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, well.
To make a long story short.
Yeah, there's so much there. I want to go back to this point of partnerships in a little bit, which is like our favorite thing, Ashoka, especially if they're like local, global, right? Yeah. So we'll circle back to that. But let's talk about challenges, because it sounds like you guys have done quite a bit in this space. And I know it hasn't all been easy. So for both of you, what have been some of the challenges? Yeah, what are
I mean, ultimately, Beiersdorf is a reflection of society, right? In terms of the people that we work with on a daily basis, and so the challenges that Michael outlined. Of course, we are also seeing that, right? I mean, in terms of resistance, predominantly because when people are not so engaged in the topic of D&I, if they don't understand actually that inclusion is a win-win, then people are looking at it, or can look at it, not everyone, can look at it as kind of a zero-sum game, right? Which is that when we are as an organization, as a company, engaging in driving a more inclusive culture, in a more inclusive environment, through our inclusive care approach, that it means that they will lose out. And that can create resistance. At the same time, another real challenge is that for many people, this is an extremely new topic, and so they really don't know so much what is the role I can play. So even if they're willing to participate, they are not confident because they don't have the tools, they don't have the knowledge, and then there is a fear, oh, what if I make a mistake? What if I say something that offends somebody? What if? And this is also why we are, and I'm actually looking at Anne-Christine because she is the mother of this, but this is also why we really have rolled out and developed a huge D&I Essentials program for all of our people leaders to drive this confidence, so that our leaders can be inclusive on a day-to-day basis, make inclusive, intentional decisions, and that we kind of take away the fear and then really maximize sort of the participation, because it is about doing this collectively. You cannot win if you're not really strongly collaborating. When you're listening also to the different perspectives, or even when they are this perspective of resistance, how do we create really constructive dialogue? So I would say those are perhaps the two biggest challenges. And then I think the third one, which is probably within the NGO space, a very, very important one, is it is really, really a marathon. And so the results really, really take time. And when results really, really take time, people can start to get very impatient, particularly in the corporate world, because you want to see results quickly, because otherwise I'm not going to give you money to do more. And so we have to also educate people to be patient, that this really is a kind of a long-term commitment that we are behind. But I think Beiersdorf is also showing that we are in it for the long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Christiane, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I love it. I can echo it, and also adding, when we started this inclusive care project, so we thought, okay, we need to be inclusive, meaning we have to talk to our colleagues around the world. We can't just, Misel and our teams, decide what is inclusion for Beiersdorf. This is impossible. That would be anti-inclusive. So we started this process asking our colleagues around the globe from different functions, and they all come back with, yes, inclusion is relevant. We love it. We need to be inclusive for our brands, for us personally, it's highly relevant. How can I do it? How can I have inclusive product design? How can I make our products themselves more inclusive? How can I do it? And this is our biggest challenge. It's not that people are not convinced about the relevance. They are more struggling with, they need a how-to guide.
Yeah.
And there is no how-to guide. There is, you need to accept, and that's always our discussion. It is a learning journey. You need to be courageous. You have to start at some point. You need to be able to make mistakes, and then going back, and then starting from anew. This is not 100% tailor-made concept, inclusion. We all need to revise our positions again and again, and for corporate. And this is a challenge for us. This is complicated. Yeah. We are used to have a project, and then we perform on the project, we know how to do it, and we have our KPIs. Right. But this is not how it works. So you need to have the courage to do it, and therefore you need to talk to people, not only within our organization. I'm 100% convinced that we need to open up, stop working in silos, bringing in on other positions, perspectives, ideas, and to exchange. That is the future.
Yeah, thank you. I so appreciate this point of it being the dot on the horizon, right? You're
Yeah.
never reaching it, it's a practice, right?
Yeah.
It's ongoing, yeah. Yeah, so I'm gonna give you guys a break.
Yep.
To Lorena, hear another example of how you've tried to drive DEI priorities inside Ashoka. So very like peeking under the hood here, very exciting. So tell us, do you resonate with what the BioSurf team has shared? What has this looked like at Ashoka?
It's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I would add with an extra layer of complexity. When you try to do this work in a place where everybody already has assumed their identity as do-gooders, we're already in the business of doing good. It's even more challenging, I have found, to start talking about how we need to improve. What are the things that we need to change and do better? And I mean, don't even start talking about unconscious bias in a space of doing good. It's like, what are you talking about? How are you doing good? Like, what are you looking at me? So that's the extra layer of challenge, but it's pretty similar. I think we are also in the business of Ashoka, we're also looking for results. We're trying to get there as soon as possible. And one of the best sentences that you said that we share is this is a journey. And it's a journey to a nowhere destination. We're never going to get there. And that's the beauty of it. We have to continuously working. I think one of the biggest misinterpretations or misunderstandings about DEI is people don't understand this is a human science. And it's going to change and it's going to evolve and it's going to transform depending on the time, the historical time, depending on the space where we are, depending on the group of people, the laws, the policies, blah, 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 blah. And so in that sense, I think for the NGO world, for the nonprofit world, I think we are going to have to build a lot of collaborations because in one sense, we probably don't have the amount of resources or maybe even the push within our field to get into that journey and get all of the tools that we need to do better. And we can probably, learn from you in how do you become more practical in achieving DEI goals. But I think the nonprofit world is in equal challenging situation. That it's not like we have to figure it out.
How to convert do-gooders.
I think it's even more difficult for you.
Yeah. And one last thing, in the particular case of Ashoka, the vision of our organization is to build an everyone a change maker world. You cannot build an everyone a change maker world without an absolute commitment towards building diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like they are interconnected and you cannot build a division between those two. So imagine the level of responsibility as an organization that we have, that our vision, our core, our veins, our DEI. White hair, and the good thing, it's not just gonna be complaining. It's not just gonna be complaining. The good thing is that, and probably different, and I feel privileged about that, is that every single person inside, every single employee, let's talk about workplace, every single employee inside of Ashoka is a DEI champion. And that is incredible. That I have partners in every single corner inside of the organization, and it's no longer my effort, is a mutual effort. And in that sense, I feel like, okay, maybe I don't have it, as complicated. There's a silver lining.
Now, we're also lucky. I think Biosdorf is lucky because we have the majority of people willing to lean in, I would say. So we're quite different as because we have care as our core value, right? It's really in our DNA. So I think that we are much, much more fortunate than many other organizations, for sure.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I want to stay on this point of stakeholder engagement, right? But so in leading up to that, I think it's fascinating that mindset shift is needed everywhere, right? It sounds like from different angles in different ways, but everybody has an evolution to do, which is why it's a growth journey, right? So what have been tactics that any of you really, because Michael, I'd love, you know, if you want to weigh in here too, but what are tactics, strategies for engaging stakeholders? Christiane, you mentioned as well, right? Like doing a rollout and being inclusive in that rollout, right? So what has that looked like for you all?
I think what is always helpful within an organization such as Bayersdorf to make a compelling business case. So to show our colleagues around the world, to show the functions, to show our leaders that inclusion and acting in an inclusive way really has a positive effect on the business. That helps. So we have the goal is to positively impact our business. That's good. And so making a compelling case, then communicating the compelling case, then building alliances within the company. So what we did is Misel is responsible for for our workforce, let's say. So I'm not. So our team is responsible for beyond value chain activities. But what we did is we broke down the silos. We just met saying, okay, you are doing stuff in this area. We are doing stuff in this area. Mm-hmm. Let's join forces immediately to increase our impact. It would be so stupid not to do it. Right. And that's why we came together. We developed this approach on inclusive care. We came up with territories, with specific territories for Bayersdorf where we want to be active so that we are more precise in terms of impact. And that's what our journey is going to look like. And then we are going to tackle it step by step by step. Compelling project after compelling project. Mm-hmm. And then it will spread. Mm-hmm. I'm convinced. Yeah. Yes, Michael.
Yeah, just give you 2 or 3 examples, also outside of the Bayersdorf world. And I always have to say, please excuse that I mainly use examples from Europe because they are the ones that are close to me and our work. So one is Glashütte, German luxury watchmaker in the deepest heart of Saxonia, where right-wing extremism is really an issue. And so that company, for instance, very clearly said, look, our company reflects what's going on around us. So let's have democracy, anti-racism trainings within our company. Bring civil society organizations in, try to change the culture and really work on this on a long-term process. That doesn't work without civil society. That doesn't work without NGOs, because you cannot just do as a company prop it from top down, but you have to make sure that it grows from bottom up, and then it meets somewhere in the middle. So that is one example. Another example is how do you make it a business case? And how do you make it a business case there? And that's also close to Ashoka. For instance, can you make it a case of social innovation? One of my favorite examples on that one is always French car maker Renault. They have initiated in France something that's called Garage Solidaire, where all car dealers by now in France repair at cost cars of single mothers. Because they say they need the car so that they can get to work and then they get the children to school. And so it has created really a big pride among these dealerships to have this local, but for sure, the company would never decide who in the end comes to them, and they are not the ones to select. Right. So they have to work with civil society again. The interesting thing on that one is, so there's a strong partnership with civil society, but in addition, they have developed a business case out of this by now, because some of these women by now buy Dacia cars, which is the low-cost brand of Renault. And so if you talk to François, the head of social impact at Renault, he will always say, the cool thing is it's a zero-sum game. We don't earn money with this, but we don't have any costs with this. Mm-hmm. So, and we have a positive effect in regards to pride. and driving into various communities. Last example.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
it's a
super
really
nice.
cool case.
Yeah.
And the other one is just look at the most recent initiative of Mercedes-Benz in their Be Visioneers program, where they are now working with innovators in well, actually everywhere around the world. Every year they're in contact with 1,000, especially young people with diverse backgrounds around innovations in the environmental technical space, but also in the social space. And for sure that will have an effect on the company. And for sure it will have an effect on the DEI perspective of the company, because it will drive innovations within the company, but also outside of the company. And these are the things that we have to look at. And this is where these DEI also becomes tangible as a case.
And it also,
Yeah.
I just want to, it also seems like companies are starting to understand, those two examples to me sound like they're starting to be aware of patience.
Mhm.
It's a long term,
Yeah, that's
you know, you're probably not going to get a bunch of results now,
Yeah.
but in the long run,
Yeah.
it's a very strategic decision. I love that. Thank you for sharing those.
Yeah.
Just so think about SDG 17. Partnership is the goal. So that's the other thing. So the Sustainable Development Goals very clearly say we can only do this with when we go into partnerships, and these are cross-sectional. And I gave examples also within business partnerships, but also with government. There are some good examples, especially in the global south, where corporates go into partnerships with government to deal with issues. There are interesting regulations in India, for instance, how companies really have to get back into community. But we also now have that, I think the latest one is Slovakia, who did it in Europe, these kind of regulations. So there is something happening, and partnership is the key. And that's where Ashoka comes in. Because you are the champions in partnership. You know how partnership works.
Yeah, so
At
let's
least
get into, yeah. Yeah.
We all think that you should know that.
I think we do, yes, but let's get into it. This will be like our last round of questions, so please start thinking of what you would like to explore with our panelists in a second. But yes, partnerships, you've all mentioned this, it's clearly key. Misel, I want to start with you. So why is this so important, and how can diverse organizations collaborate to advance DEI?
I mean, for us, partnerships is really, really important, because the reality is, I mean, the stark truth is that, you know, when it comes to DEI, it is such a complex, multifaceted topic that the expertise does not lie within our organization. It does not. And therefore, we need to make sure that we are partnering with external experts, because they give us the knowledge, they give us the guidance, the understanding that enables us as an organization to then build the plans that then have ultimately an impact. And an impact it has, because if I think about the various partnerships that we have within Beiersdorf, within the D&I and the corporate social responsibility space, it also has a huge impact for example, our grassroots communities. You know, because we really are proud to make sure that we give a voice to our people, and for them and give them the opportunity to unite in whatever constellation they want to unite in order to better ensure that Beiersdorf meets their needs. And they do that also with the partner organizations that we are collaborating with in order to really drive a cultural shift. And what is really interesting in terms of creating then this sort of this business case is that when we look at our engagement survey results, we really see huge is not so, but we really see a shift, a positive shift when it comes to, topics around engagement, but also a sense of belonging, an ability, to have an impact in the organization, to understand what your role is in delivering against our ambition. So we're really seeing that it is impacting the way that people feel in the organization, and we also all know that when people are more engaged, it means that they also stay more loyal, they are performing better, which then leads to better decision making, more innovation, and a virtuous circle in terms of more partnerships. So it's really important, and I think we need to be humble enough as an organization to also say that we don't have all the answers, and how important it is to reach out to the experts and collaborate.
Yeah, I love that. And so let's stay with that virtuous cycle. I know, Christiane, this is something you're very passionate about, this kind of internal to external cycle. So what have been some strategies that you've used in that kind of more holistic approach to DEI that you were describing earlier with your internal stakeholders?
So what we did, and I just briefly mentioned it, what we discussed is we need to clarify, what does inclusion mean to Biostalk? What does it mean to our brands from Nivea? So this is our flagship brand all around the globe. So what does it mean, and how can we define territories, fields, areas in which we get active, credibly active, tangibly active? That was very important because inclusion is such a broad field. So I changed my perspective on inclusion, I would say, each day. So that's why it's so difficult to define it. And there are also all these different impacts. After yesterday, I again have to rethink everything and all the sessions. So we are in the middle of a process. Still, for us, we need to define where do we want to be active, because only then we can create impact, only then we can create learnings. And just one additional comment when it comes to inclusion. I told you we ask our colleagues around the globe what it means to us. We did not only ask our colleagues, we set up a project with Ashoka. So Philippe is here, and so we asked his team saying, okay, when it comes to inclusion, what does inclusion mean to grassroots initiative? What are the challenges? What is going on in the global south? I don't know. So we do not have the expertise. So we also challenged our view, because in a corporate world, yes, there are experts, but still we are living in a bubble. We are in a bubble, yes, of course, yeah. And so we need to open up. And also Ashoka came back with topics, with perspective that weren't so very good for us and nice and easy to take. It was really sometimes, we thought in our team, okay, that's a mess. We won't find partners. So again, this is not an easy process, and cooperating with partners, it's not just the easy way. We do not sign contracts and then somebody is doing the good stuff for us. Not at all. It is a challenge each day.
Right.
Can I just really quickly build on that?
Yes,
Because
please.
it reminds me of actually, so what is really interesting also, and sometimes you really get you're thrown in reality or the cold water, right? Because we are also as Biostalk on a journey to build a really disability inclusive organization. And and we've built kind of a network of partners to help us to get there, to be truly inclusive kind of for people with all abilities. And what's really interesting is they were also saying, like, listen, Biostalk, just because you've now decided that you want to become a disability inclusive organization, don't think that everyone is like running to you, waiting to collaborate, because you haven't proven yourself in this space. You're not yet credible. You are really right at the start. And and this is really sort of a reflection of, just because we say yes, it doesn't mean that all those partners say yes. They'll say no. stop, take a step back, right? Let us really understand what the right
Yeah.
way forward is. And this is why it is so important, because you know
Yeah.
what, otherwise we would run ahead and do the wrong thing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Right, resonating with what you said about it's a marathon, partners help you maybe sustain that momentum and that effort and learn as
Yeah.
you're going, yeah. Yeah, Laura, I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on this, because I know you think a lot about partnerships and how the work inside Ashoka can advance also through partnerships, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit more, I'm gonna add a layer of complexity and being provocative. I mean, at the end of the day, what DEI is trying to do, and we've seen true participation, power dynamics, disrupt systems of oppression and hierarchy. And in that sense, we have to build relationships and partnerships from the people that we are supporting, our Ashoka fellows. Their business, almost in every single case, is to disrupt systems that are not working for the vast majority or that are not working for certain groups of people. And in that sense, they are touched to reality.
Yeah.
We need to shut up and listen to them, and from them understand how are we as an organization really either supporting or not supporting that much that disruption of systems that are not working. And in that sense, I think that this is the biggest challenge of DEI. It's about power dynamics, and it's about shifting how the world works.
Yeah.
And those people, we're talking like the backlash to this DEI work comes from those people who are holding the majority of the power today. Of course, they do not want to see success of breaking how the world, how the order. I actually think that they have no option anymore, and part of the reason why they are pushing so much, part of the reason why a Starbucks person and so forth, not to be confused with Starbucks, why this man is investing so much, why we are seeing so many governments also falling into that far right, is because they are seeing that this movement, no matter how complex, no matter how difficult, no matter how many years and centuries it's gonna take us, it's not gonna stop. We all understand that this collaboration, this need to belong and to work and to see each other and to help each other is a movement that is innate to us as human beings, and there is no way stopping this. And in that sense, collaboration is the key word. If we are not sharing intelligence, if we are not sharing power, between the social field and the political field, blah, 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 we're probably gonna take much longer than we would like to.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, that it does feel in some senses that the natural arc of history is leaning towards this, and yet, right? And yet, why is this still so hard, especially for big organizations that have a big role to play, right? So I'd love to hear any other thoughts on that, and then we'll open up to audience questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think on what you said, yes, it is collaboration and partnership, and many Ashoka fellows reflect that. Right now, it is also about dialogue. It's about having a conversation, because there are differences that we have a really hard time to overcome, and we have polarizations that are endangering this, what we all want to see. And I'm not gonna just start talking about the situation of LGBTQI people in Uganda or in other, especially also in African countries, but also in Eastern Europe and so on.
Or in the United States.
Again, it's a contested field. I think we have the case. I also strongly believe that. But we have to go into a conversation to also take some people, at least with us, that right now are struggling with this.
Yeah.
So that is the one thing. The other thing, and that goes, I don't know if you, in Fridays for Future in Germany, there's they use one claim that I really, really like, and I'm going to use German now, and I'm going to try to translate it. Machen ist wie wollen, nur krasser. So doing is like wanting to do, but it's a lot cooler. And that is the other thing that is really essential. It's this we have to do. We can, also a company can say a lot. We see a lot of nice commitments and so on, but in the end, it is the doing that really makes the difference. You
Yeah.
have to make the case. And also in our work, that is one of the hardest things. You have to walk the talk, as they so nicely say in English. And that is, and this is actually where it then comes back, because we had that example, and that interestingly enough, if you look at, for instance, consumer research, most consumers still, if you look, for instance, at the Edelman Trust Barometer, still believe that companies are the source of social change in this world. They actually believe that a lot more than state or even civil society, which I find always pretty amazing. But so there is actually also a certain basic trust in that corporates can do something. And this is where then these partnerships come in. And you have, especially Ashoka has shown that together with corporates, you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. This question of, we call it closing the intention action gap.
Yeah.
There's a session here this afternoon where we're gonna explore that. It's a big thing right now, right? Because there's so many people who are so well intentioned, and yet how do you move into action, right? So that's definitely a big question. Well, thank you all. I want to open it up to see, I have more questions, fear not, but we want to open it up, maybe have a little conversation. Yes, please.
So kind of going back to how we're talking about the political climate in the US, but like also globally, like a lot of global brands I see in Europe that have a lot of US operations are getting really nervous. And so not every company is as fantastic and has like the long history that people do. But there's a lot of companies who have made progress and you can tell they're starting to get nervous and they're walking things back. And so I guess, what advice do you have if you're a consultant or you're like seeing this in the world? Like, how do we keep people in the space and it not just seem like a trend that was really popular in 2020 to 2024?
Yeah. So I give you an example. If you go to Christopher Street Day in Frankfurt, you will see all companies. There's one company you won't see. I'll talk about that. If you go to Christopher Street Day in Warsaw, there's no company but one company, Ben & Jerry's. So it is that question of, can you accept that having a standpoint on an issue also creates controversy? And what we are talking a lot about is, how do you make a company resilient towards controversy? Because we will have controversial debates about these issues. And actually, I think it is normal in a democracy that we have controversial debates. But for companies, and it's really interesting in Germany right now, because most German companies took a stand in front of it before the European election. They very clearly said, we believe in diversity, we believe in a free market, we believe in, so it was that has in that way never happened before. So it is also about taking a stand, and it's good to take a stand. And then you have to ask yourself again and again, how resilient is my organization? How can I also need to make sure that my employees follow and they understand this. And this is where people come in with employee engagement and with what you are doing and so on. But that's the only thing I really hope for, that people take a stand.
I would just add, sell to the youth. Think about the long term. Look at what young people are reacting to. And so if they are either right now consuming your products or they're going to consume your products eventually, well, think about that group of people, because the way that they, and I don't know if you've heard through, the events of the summit, but the way that they are thinking, the way that they are expressing, the way that they are demanding from the companies that they buy things or for the companies that they want to work for, they are way ahead of our conversation. Like they know, they live, and they are walking the talk as human beings, as society, as consumers, as workforce. So I would say, listen to the young people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yes, no, and I'm with you, but I always have to say, then now I take it from political side, then I see who votes for certain parties.
Yeah.
And then I have to say, in Germany, young people vote for right-wing extremist parties.
Yeah.
So, but it's also, it's again, it's demographics, it's social issues,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
But in the end, I really, on my day-to-day basis, I also strongly believe, because when I see the young people that work with me, or the NGOs I work with, and often very young people, it is exactly that as the driver. But we will only keep that driver if we keep social cohesion in our society is an issue, and if we go into dialogue. We need to figure this out.
Yeah.
We really need to figure this out.
Yeah, I think this point of making a stand is very interesting. It's also gone poorly for other companies, right? Like Budweiser had a transgender influencer, and Budweiser's clientele is not in support of giving transgender people rights, right? Their market, their audience. So that really backfired. So I think that the trick is, how do you take a stand in a way that upholds your moral values and is consistent with your business, which sounds like that's something you've
And-
been working on.
And I think
Yeah.
this is the key, because you have to be authentic. So I mean, I even
Exactly.
have to question
Yes.
whether, the action of Budweiser is actually naturally part of the course of their
Right.
organization. And I think this is what we try to do and are not always successful at, and also are not always courageous enough yet, but really what we do try to do is to be authentic to our values. I mean, and then when you are faced with a backlash, which by the way, very often the fear of the backlash is much bigger than the actual
actual,
backlash
yeah.
itself, so this is, we have to
Yes.
overcome that sort of what if,
Right,
well, very
yes.
often that what if doesn't happen.
Yes.
But if it does happen, and we have done something and taken a stand for the values that we stand for, I mean, courage, trust, simplicity, and care, then if we're fully aligned, then you know what, then as a company, it is also much easier to withstand it and to accept the consequences.
Yeah.
And I have to say, there's a great example from Diesel actually a few years ago when they really were very active and vocal in Italy around the DNI, around the LGBTIQ space, and received quite a backlash. And then they came out with sort of a campaign saying, thank you for those people that have now decided to no longer buy our brands, because you know what, you're not actually the consumer
Right.
that we are after.
To be
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a great way
Such a
of
great
standing
way.
for you, turning around, a bit of the backlash. I mean,
Yes.
so
Right, we don't mind losing you essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just adding to what you just said, Misel, I think also taking a stand is not only dangerous, it is also an opportunity, also a business opportunity. So it is, for me, a moral imperative, so that's my point, and good for the business, but it's also a business opportunity. So it is, we are just so very much focused on the potential problems and challenges and all that. Let's look at the opportunities we have. And that's how young people reflect it, what we are doing, and that we are a company that actually takes a stand. So I would go with opportunities rather than
New
problems.
markets, what innovations possible, yeah. So, yeah, well, I was gonna say, thank you for that great question. Yeah. Other questions, yes, please.
Hello, so I have a question on the topic of collaboration through participation and inclusion. And my question is, because seeing often like the collaborations with like big organizations who are making change, there's a lot of partnerships with other big organizations in the nonprofit area, and how we could also like make it more participative for those organizations who are led by people from underrepresented groups, whether it's like migrants, newcomers, young people, and other groups that want to work with big organizations, but they don't have right network, they don't have the connections to do so. What is that we could do together in order to create this bridge between?
Yeah, I could take it first up. I mean, even in an organization like Ashoka, we have made some mistakes. One of the mistakes that we have done when we started our work with migration was that, we thought we had all the players in the room, we were starting our collaboration, and we realized that there weren't that many migrants in the room. And we're talking about migration. So it is very important, especially when you're thinking about DEI, that true participation is actually who are the people that are most connected to the problem. Those are the people that should be in the room helping us make a decision. And in many ways, those are the people that speak. We are the people that listen. Indeed, remember that the component of power dynamics is key. And if we're not, every time that we're building a collaboration, every time that we're exploring something that is related to DEI, if we are not answering the question of, okay, who are the people that need to be represented here? That to me is the definition of equitable diversity. So when I hear diversity, I hear equitable diversity, which is who are the peoples, the groups that historically and continue to be misrepresented in decisions of power. I think for our work of collaboration, that has to be a predominant in wherever we are building those collaborations.
That is the one side. The other, that is important. But the reality is, and now if I work with a corporate, they will ask me, give me one organization that can do this around the world. Because I need a recognizable brand, I need whatever. So, but the important thing on this is, for sure, as we heard, there is interest in, we want to hear these voices. So this is where intermediaries, and this is where I take Ashoka as an intermediary in the network come in, because you need translators. So even in our consulting, it often is we translate what civil society does towards a corporate. And for sure that brings another itchy question about gatekeepers and how do you manage these gatekeepers. But I think that needs to be seen. There need to be these funnels and these catalysts that help to create that. Because in the end, it is very possible to create a funding program that in the end goes to smaller organizations in the field. And interestingly enough, often even if you work with large NGOs, in the end, in the Global South by now, you don't think Save the Children in the end gives the money towards others. So it is really that how can you manage this? Because out of various organizational logics that we can contest and that we can discuss definitely, often there is that need for making sure that there's one gate or one process, because if not, it becomes just too complicated to handle. But that shouldn't be an excuse. I think there is an opportunity, and there is the Ashoka opportunity. There are other intermediaries that do that stuff and help with that.
And I would also say, because I fully agree. I mean, I think unfortunately that is within the corporate reality really a reality. Yeah. At the same time, I think, and we just talked about it, that it's also companies need to be much more aware of the impact and the strength of working with local NGOs in local markets, right? I mean, the knowledge and the connections and the impact on the community is much bigger when we really work locally. So we have to find kind of the right balance. At the same time, I also would say, if I go back to what Christiane was saying about the silos, there's such a tendency to work in silos. That tendency is the same, I would guess, within the NGO space. And so therefore you can become extremely fractured, even though ultimately you have the same goal. And then when you actually are uniting, so if you're not maybe as dogmatic around your what you stand for, and you unite a bit more towards one goal, then you also have much bigger visibility. So I would also challenge a little bit back to the NGO community, to the partner community, to say, don't be so, actually not be so rigid. I mean, that's not fair, but I mean, but challenge yourself, to really find also the common space so that you can unite and have a bigger voice and a bigger presence and a bigger impact, because then you can still deliver against your sort of individual goals and objectives as well.
Yeah, thank you. But there was another question. Thank you. Yeah, yes.
I would have a question maybe towards the topic of that you said as well, Bayersdorf as other corporation might not have the expertise on the topic of D&I in all dimensions, etc. However, those companies hopefully have a lot of expertise. Is it in marketing, is it finances, is it supply chain, etc. How can we leverage more synergies and give them also the people within an organization the opportunity to work also more to an inclusive cooperation, but also to have an impact on society.
But see, I can, so the classical one, so corporate volunteering is one of the classical levers for that. And there's no surprise why sometimes these programs are actually is also called switch programs, because they give you exposure towards something that you wouldn't get exposed to either in your corporate or in your NGO setting. And especially when they are, and bear with me, when they are skills-based volunteering, so where it is around marketing skills, finance skills, legal skills, and so on, then you can actually create these synergies. And I've seen programs like this, for instance, with Mondelez, where they have very much used it also in collaboration with civil society networks to give their competencies, but then also to take back with them, especially the DEY experience, because it makes a big difference. And we can argue also there. We can argue: is this all-time? Where's the empowerment perception here? Because some of these programs also you have to be careful that they don't turn into tourism or whatever. But some people have really thought this through, and then it brings back learnings, because it is. For somebody who sits, I don't know, in Chicago in an office, and then suddenly is somewhere in Brazil in a slum or so, and works with an NGO, these are experiences that they will take back as DEY experiences also.
Yeah, and I think so. At Changemaker Companies, which is Ashoka's sort of solution to this or offering for this, I think we've done a very good job in saying something like, to your point, you're already investing in these initiatives externally. Let's make sure they're building up your employees, right? That your employees are harnessing those learnings, because it doesn't just happen automatically, right? So the big question that we sit with is, how do you help corporate employees be more socially innovative, which is ultimately the link to core business, right? It's, to Christiane's point, it's about innovation. It's about untapped opportunity that links impact, sustainability, et cetera, diversity and inclusion, right? All of those things with a real business case that's going to ultimately help the survival of the company or the thriving of the company and bring in revenue, which is the goal of companies, and that's okay, right? So we run a lot of these learning and development programs around they could be like internal incubators or engagement with our fellows, right? And so there's real journeys that companies can go on to, again, help walk the talk, close the intention action gap, and actually learn how to be impactful through your work, right? So I think the offerings are there if companies want to look for them, right? There has to be a willingness, which increasingly companies have, I think.
Obviously, in the context of Care Beyond Skin, our purpose, we initiated a global, I would call it, employee engagement program. So our Care Beyond Skin days, and obviously here in this room, our colleagues who are more equipped to discuss it and talk about it. And so we rolled it out 1 year ago. And the idea is that the company is giving 1 day off for a joint social team event. I would put it like that. And this initiative is an enormous success. It is really, I would say colleagues around the globe are really enthusiastic about really going into the local communities and doing whatever they want to do and what is necessary on the ground. So this is really a great success, but it is only a first step. So this is 1 day, and in 1 day you can't change the world. So I think from an employee engagement perspective, the next step would be definitely skill-based volunteering, saying, okay, what is the expertise of each and every colleague? and how can this expertise be used in an organization over, let's say, half a year, something like that. So I think this is also a learning journey for us. The first step, the employee volunteering day, but now we will step it up and level it up, definitely.
Yes, well said. Last question, yes.
So I kind of want to ask the question based on definition that Misel in the beginning provided about inclusion, which is like kind of that everyone is kind of feeling free of barriers and obstacles, that everyone gets the opportunity. And I'm wondering, when companies talk about their own DEI journey, a lot of companies focus on, okay, our journey is kind of based on the applications we receive, and then we kind of talk about increasing the diversity. But I'm wondering, for a lot of these candidates, actually the journey, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The journey is way behind, you know, by the time you can write up that application, there is so much more to do. You need a certain amount of exposure and education to even know what you want to do, where you want to apply. And I'm wondering, like, when companies say that their journey towards D&I, is it really complete if you're not looking at it at a bigger scope, looking at the communities that you also need to uplift? Is there another bridge that companies need to do inside and outside value chain? Because without it, it's still not fully complete. You're losing out still on a lot of talent. I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
Yes, I mean, super great question. And no, and indeed, this is also why I'm super happy that I'm also responsible for talent acquisition now. Because indeed, it allows me to apply the principles of DE&I in the whole, you know, talent acquisition journey, and really build an inclusive recruitment concept, right? Which we're doing, because what we indeed know, we really also noticed that when we started looking at, you know, who is applying to Beiersdorf, and we realized that we're missing out on a tremendous amount of diverse talent, actually, and that the applications we receive, great ones, but quite homogeneous, right? And then we try to understand, so why is that? And it's a combination of where are we intentionally present, because we are assuming that when we put out jobs that everyone would want to come, and we realized, actually, you know what, there's quite some communities out there that look at Beiersdorf and don't yet think this is a great place for me to thrive, because you haven't yet shown, you know, that I can have a great career here. And so then we need to be super intentional about reaching out to those communities. But also when it comes to the application process, you know, we're very focused on potential. So we want to hire those that we believe have really the potential to succeed. But then the way we look at potential is very often by looking at where are people now, right? And we are not looking at what is the journey that people have taken to get where they are now. Because quite frankly, you know, some people have a journey like this to get here, and some people have a journey like this to get there. But their journey is much longer, and the resilience and the agility and the mindset and the rigor that they needed to get there. And that was something that we were not capturing, you know, in the way that we were recruiting. So we are now really looking indeed also at, you know, how can we be really inclusive in our entire recruitment journey, so that the barriers that we have barriers, right? You need to have 6 months of an international internship. Yeah, well, guess what? I mean, you know, if you don't have the money to do that, you can't. If you maybe have a religious background which doesn't allow you to go as a single woman somewhere to another, then guess what, you know? And so we were just eliminating people before they even came, you know? And so this is absolutely something that we're looking at to addressing, so that we can really invite, you know, everyone to come to the organization, have a really fair and equitable experience in terms of the application process. And then when they're in, give them the, you know, have all the barriers eliminated. But it is a journey. It's a journey. And we're taking steps to,
I mean, I guess it's a journey for everyone, even in geos, based
I'm
on.
gonna call Misel tomorrow and I'm thinking, can I have things that you're using? Can I see what you're using? Yeah.
Yeah, so we do have to close. I will say this question of DEI and recruiting could be its own session.
Yes,
Anytime
yeah,
it's
yeah.
ACMS, we do
Yeah.
that.
Next year.
Yeah, exactly. But no, thank you guys so much, all of you, for the great work you're all doing and also for the collaboration for this session. It really was amazing and like a true example of what we talked about here. So thank you. Yeah, please round of applause for